Okay, today's job is replacing the oil pan on my 2006 Nissan Murano. When you got here, this is the new pan. I was able to get it off eBay. It was not that expensive. That's the outside that you can see, and that's the inside. This is actually where all your oil sits. Oil that's not circulating through the engine at that exact moment sits in this pan, rests in this pan, and absolutely first thing in the morning, this is where all your oil has come to settle. And this is what the old oil pan looks like, still on the car. This car's got about 135 to 140,000 miles on it. And so what's happened is, rust has started on the front here so much that the oil is actually seeping right through the pan. You can actually flake away little pieces of it. So basically the procedure we're going to do here is there's several 10mm bolts around the perimeter of this pan. And this car is kind of nice in this respect because there's not a lot of stuff in the way here. Some cars have like a cross member, especially trucks, or you'll have like a front differential. Hoses maybe go in different ways. This hose back here is kind of close, but it's not actually going to interfere with the work today. So my first step is going to be to drain the oil, and then I'm going to pull these 10mm bolts out. That'll allow me to release the pan. Okay, so to speed up the process pulling off that oil pan, I'm using my impactor. This is usually used for driving screws, which is pretty good for that. But for removing pans like this, I like to use one of these. So what I've done is this is a 1/4-inch hex adapter that goes in, just like you would with a screw bit. Converts to a 3/8 socket drive. I've put a universal on here to make it a little easier, and that's my 10mm socket. So I'm just going to whip those things off real quick. Okay, so I've got all the bolts out of there. Let's see, that was 10 bolts pulled out, and it's still holding itself up there. Give a gentle prying with the fingers around the edges, whatever spot you can grab. You don't really want to pry on this with like screwdrivers or wrenches, really, because you don't want to mar the mating surface. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to tap it gently with a hammer just on this pan, on the old part. Tap it, try and break that seal loose, and it should fall right down for me. Okay, so what I had to do here was, if you're looking here, so here's your oil filter behind here, right? If you look, there's a metal lip right here. Try the best look I can here. There, okay? So what I was able to do, and it wasn't easy, but I did some doing here, flat blade screwdriver, and that is inserted underneath the lip of that pan up there on that side. It was a challenge to get there, but you got to make sure you keep the screwdriver parallel, flat to that metal surface, because you don't want to gouge. You want to go straight in and break that seal. So now that I got that in there, I'm going to pry that, and it's going to start prying the pan off for me. Okay, so that's what we're looking at when the oil pan is actually removed. So a better picture here for you is I had the screwdriver shoved in right here to break the seal right here. And then I used this flat space here to pry that loose. Once I broke that loose, I was able to get enough room to get my fingers underneath here. I pulled underneath this part, pulled underneath that part, I was able to pull it free. It's just breaking it loose, just that first part. So we're actually looking, this is actually the whole oil pan area. This is a screen that actually feeds up to the oil pump. So this is the path that the oil takes to actually get up into your engine. As it sucks it through this screen, goes up through, cycles through the engine, then drips back down through some of these other channels. So next move we're going to do here, these mating surfaces all need to be cleaned. All this old white adhesive, RTV and so on, all needs to get cleaned off. So I'm going to scrape that with a razor blade. Maybe use a light sandpaper, very gently, just make sure it's nice and smooth, in order to prep that surface. Take a second, give you a look at the old oil pan. So here's some more of that adhesive and seal there. Now, I told you I was going to try and hit it with a hammer, which I did. I was actually using a rubber mallet to try and break it loose. And you can see right here, see that hole? Right there where that light is showing through? Just a rubber mallet. I think I was on the first strike. broke right through the pan completely. So that really was paper thin by about 130,000 miles or so. Okay, so back to the brand new oil pan. So this has been on my shelf for about a month or two waiting to do this project. And it was a little dusty, so I just cleaned it up, wiped it out good, make sure there's no dust or debris in there. Now, the original pan was held, sealed rather, not held, was sealed with just some RTV. So you could probably do that, but I wasn't sure exactly how it was held on. I thought there was a gasket in there. So I bought the gasket. I got it locally at my local parts store. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use some RTV. This is high temp RTV sealant. What we do is we do a paper thin layer, really super thin, on this. Then we can place this on, and we put a super thin layer on this also. This just helps make up the difference for any very minor imperfections. We don't need a lot of this stuff. It's not like caulk, not like filling, like a gap filling. It just takes up such minor imperfections, so you don't really develop leaks, hopefully. And then, so once you do that, you need to be ready to put this right on. So you should have already had the mating surface scraped, as I described to you, and then we'll put the RTV on those sections I just showed you, and then you have to be ready to bolt this right up right after that, because the RTV has a set time. It's not like you can prep this and then go scrape the engine and then expect to put it on, because this is already going to be cured. This is already going to start to cure. So that's some of the steps you could take. So once you've scraped it, you want to go around either with a shop rag, paper towel, something like that. Make sure you clean up all the debris. Make sure there's nothing still catching just on that mating surface there. And we're going to follow this with a very, very light, very gentle sandpaper treatment, just to make sure that there's nothing else that we missed. This has to be very smooth and free of debris or grease or oils. This is a 320 sandpaper. Like I said, nothing too heavy, just a nice little scuffing to make sure you get all the debris off there. Take that all the way around. Quick note for you, since we're down here, this is the oil cooler pipe. This actually comes off where your filter mounts, and this is very badly rusted, so this is going to get replaced some other time on this car. So this is something for you to look for. The rusting is very bad. It's chipping away. I'm not sure it's leaking yet, but this is something you should probably plan on doing too. If you're here doing the oil pan, you might want to plan on doing this. This will be called the oil cooler pipe, and that pipes the oil toward the front so it can be cooled, and it comes back again through this other pipe here. I'll probably replace this rubber hose at the same time. It's rather soft. Okay, so I'll give you an idea what we're going to do here with the RTV. Nice thin bead, like so. I like to go around these screw holes, these bolt holes. Give you an example. So I'm going to do that all the way around the pan. That's what that looks like now. I'm going to carefully place this down, make sure the bolt holes are lining up. Press down gently. Very gently. I'm going to repeat the process now. Run another quick bead around the perimeter. Then I'll take it directly, put it up underneath, and start tightening the bolts. What you want to do first is you want to very gently tighten all these bolts until they're snug with your finger. I'll take the socket and just twist it, just to snug it up so that it's just meeting it. And then I'll talk to you more about the tightening sequence and the torque and so on. Okay, so it's easier to show you this in my tool drawer than it is underneath the car. But if we imagine that this is actually the new pan underneath the car, basically what I did after I showed you how I put the RTV sealant on the underneath lip of this, then I placed the gasket on, then another thin layer of RTV sealant. Then what you do is you maneuver this up underneath the engine carefully. You don't want to smear the RTV that you have on that gasket, but you want to put it up there gently and carefully, and then press it. You want to try and get two opposite of these holes to match up, because if two of them match up, then it's lined up good. So you press it up there gently probably with one hand, and in your other hand you want to have one of those bolts ready to go. So then you're going to want to put one bolt in one of these holes. It doesn't have to be this hole specifically, it could be any of them. But if you have the opposing holes, then you know that those two are lined up and the whole thing's lined up. So you'd be holding this with your left hand, for instance, pressed up underneath the car. And then you can start threading one of those bolts into my hand. And then you can go over here, thread this opposite one in my hand. Then what you're going to do is you're going to use just an extension and your fingers, no ratchet, no power tool at this point. And you're going to go ahead and you're going to gently snug that in just with what your fingers can do. Okay? You're not trying to really tighten it down too much now. This is going to be a tedious process. So you can tighten that one, then you can tighten the other one that you put in there just first. Okay? And then you're going to continue in a crisscross pattern, always crossing the center of the pan. So then the next bolt you put in could be this one. Then you would skip over to this one. Okay? And then this one. And then this one. And so on until you have all the bolts actually installed finger tight. Very, very finger tight. Okay, you can't tighten these too much right now, because the issue you have is you can warp the pan. You can do uneven pressure on the gasket. And so once you have these finger tight, then what you're going to do is you can go to a ratchet, but you're going to use very gentle pressure. Again, you're going to repeat the process, crisscrossing back and forth around the whole pan. What you're going to find is even though you put these finger tight, every time you go around, they're going to feel a little bit loose again, because you're very slowly increasing the pressure and spreading the pressure all the way around the pan. Your final step I recommend is going to be with a torque wrench, and what I found the rating for is only 7 foot-pounds. It's not very much. The number I found was actually in inch-pounds, I believe, but I converted it to about 7 foot-pounds, which again isn't very much. But you're going to go through probably 2, 3, or even 4 steps all the way around this pan, crisscrossing about 3 or 4 times in order to get to that. Taking your time with this is important, because you want to make sure this makes a good seal for a long time. So that gives you an idea of how you can actually tighten this carefully and slowly for the longest possible lifespan and reliability. That same procedure I just described will also work on transmission pans, as well as rear differential covers. Anything like that has such a large mating surface like this all the way around, or valve covers also, same thing. Valve covers, same way. Crisscrossing, very carefully, slowly tightening it down. Never actually tightening down to the full torque the first time you touch those bolts. You have got to take your time. I would estimate that this portion by itself probably took me about 30 minutes once I went across so many times. So thanks for watching this far. I hope you have good luck with it. Take care.